The moment that stopped every single person inside that stadium cold happened in the fourth inning, and it had nothing to do with a pitch, a strikeout, or a home run. It had everything to do with a play so deliberately violent, so far outside the boundaries of professional baseball, that it triggered an immediate dugout-clearing incident and sent shockwaves through the entire sport within minutes. But to truly understand what made this moment so explosive, you need to understand exactly what Shohei Ohtani had been doing to the Los Angels all weekend long. Because by the time Nolan Shanle made that decision at first base, the Angels had already been completely dominated, and the frustration inside that dugout had clearly reached a breaking point. This was Game 3 of the Dodgers vs. Angels rivalry weekend series. The Los Angeles-Dodgers were going for the sweep. Coming into this game, the Angels had already been handled in 2 consecutive matchups, and the Dodgers showed absolutely no intention of letting up. 2 Japanese stars were at the center of everything: Shohei Ohtani, batting leadoff and playing designated hitter, and Roki Sasaki, taking the mound as the starting pitcher. This matchup carried enormous weight, not just for the standings, but because of what these 2 players represent at the stage of their careers, and how their performances together were about to define an entire series. Before Game 3 even began, Ohtani had already made his presence felt in this series in a way that left no room for argument. In Game 2, Ohtani finished with 5 RBIs, added a triple and a double, and pushed his batting average up to .258. Those were not the numbers of a player going through the motions. That was a player operating at a level the Angels simply had no answer for. Game 3 opened with Ohtani stepping into the batter's box against Grayson Rodriguez, a right-handed pitcher who had every reason to approach this matchup with caution. On the second pitch of the at-bat, Rodriguez delivered a 95 mph fastball to the outer edge of the strike zone. Ohtani read it perfectly, made clean contact, and sent a single into center field. First pitch of the game, first plate appearance, and Ohtani was already on base. Rodriguez made an adjustment in Ohtani's second at-bat. He changed speeds, altered his locations, and this time it worked. He struck Ohtani out. It was a rare moment of containment, the kind of at-bat that gives a pitching staff a brief sense of confidence. As it turned out, that strikeout was almost the only time the Angels managed to keep Ohtani quiet for the entire game. By the time the fourth inning arrived, the Dodgers were already in front, and they had no intention of sitting on that lead. The innings started building pressure almost immediately. Teoscar Hernandez worked a walk. Miguel Rojas followed with a hit. Then Hye-Seong Kim came through with consecutive contact that loaded the bases with 2 outs. The crowd inside the stadium was already rising. The moment was set up perfectly, and then Shohei Ohtani walked to the plate. Rodriguez went to his curveball. Ohtani read it out of the hand, sat back on the breaking ball, and drove it to right field. 2 runners scored. The stadium erupted. The Dodgers had extended their lead in the biggest moment of the inning, and Ohtani had once again delivered when it mattered most. And then, as the crowd was still erupting, everything changed. Nolan Shanle, the Angels' first baseman, charged into Ohtani at first base. This was not incidental contact. This was not an awkward collision resulting from a close play. Multiple camera angles captured the sequence clearly. There was no attempt by Shanle to tag the ball, no defensive justification for the force of contact. The impact knocked Ohtani to the ground. He went down holding his shoulder and hip, and he stayed down. The cheering that had filled that stadium 30 seconds earlier turned instantly into angry, sustained booing. Players from the Dodgers dugout were on the field within moments. Freddie Freeman was one of the first out, leading the charge toward the play. Kyle Tucker stepped in to prevent the situation from escalating further into a full confrontation. The benches had cleared. Coaches, players, and staff were out on the field, and the entire atmosphere of the game had shifted from celebration to controlled outrage. The umpires reviewed the play. The conclusion was immediate. Nolan Shanle was ejected. There was no extended deliberation. The play was reviewed, the evidence was clear, and Shanle was removed from the game on the spot. The reaction from analysts and broadcasters was equally swift. Alex Rodriguez called it crossing the line of sports competition. That framing captured exactly what the replay showed. This was not a hard baseball play. This was an act that had no place within the sport's competitive boundaries. The question being asked in stadiums, broadcast booths, and across social media in the immediate aftermath was the same everywhere. Was this frustration from the Angels over what Ohtani had been doing to them all series long? Medical staff rushed onto the field. Ohtani stayed down for several minutes. The entire stadium stood. When he finally got back to his feet, what followed was a standing ovation, not just from the Dodgers fans, but from the crowd as a whole. The reaction was immediate and loud, and it reflected how deeply this moment had affected everyone watching. In the post-game, Ohtani spoke directly about what had happened. His words were measured, clear, and widely distributed across global sports media within hours. "I can accept losing in competition, but I will never accept violence. Baseball should be decided by skill, not personal hatred." That quote moved through the baseball world and beyond it rapidly. The sentiment it expressed resonated with fans and players across the sport, and it positioned Ohtani not just as one of baseball's best players, but as someone whose conduct under pressure carries real weight. While Ohtani's response captured the emotional story of the day, what happened on the field in the immediate aftermath of the collision was a direct statement from the Dodgers as a team. They scored 5 runs in the 4th inning. That number is not a coincidence of timing. It was the inning that included the collision, the ejection, and the standing ovation. The Dodgers went back to work and finished what they had started, and the scoreboard reflected it. Roki Sasaki, meanwhile, was delivering what would become the best game of his MLB career up to that point. He pitched 7 innings, a career longest outing at the major league level. He allowed only 4 hits, gave up just 1 earned run, and finished with 8 strikeouts. The numbers alone tell the story clearly enough, but what the numbers don't fully capture is the quality of his pitching throughout those 7 innings. Earlier in the season, command had been a challenge for Sasaki. On this day, that issue was largely gone. His fastball and splitter combination was working with devastating precision, and Angels hitters were completely unable to make solid, consistent contact against it. 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts from a pitcher who is still in the early phase of his MLB career. That performance was a signal about where Sasaki is heading, not just where he is right now. Through all of it, the collision, the medical staff, the dugout clearing, the booing, the standing ovation, Ohtani kept playing baseball. His 4th at-bat ended in a strikeout. The Angels, at least in that plate appearance, got the result they wanted, but the game wasn't done. In the 9th inning, with a runner already on first base, Ohtani stepped in and singled to left field. That was his 3rd hit of the game. It was his first 3-hit game since the Miami Marlins series, and it was meaningful for reasons that go beyond the box score. The timing on those hits, the pitch recognition, the rhythm at the plate, all of it pointed toward an Ohtani who has fully returned to form. His own description of the game confirmed that. "I felt natural with every swing," he said after the game. That is a significant statement from a hitter who spent portions of the earlier season working back toward his best level. Stepping back from the individual performances, what this sweep means for the Los Angeles Dodgers as a whole organization requires a broader look. The Dodgers swept the Angels across all 3 games of this rivalry weekend series, extending their winning streak and reinforcing exactly the kind of complete multidimensional baseball that makes them a top force in the National League. This team is not relying on one player or one lineup slot or one pitcher to carry everything. They have pitching depth, they have offensive balance, and they have roster construction that allows them to respond to whatever a game throws at them. On this specific day, they had a starting pitcher in Sasaki who gave them 7 quality innings, a lineup that scored when runs were needed most, and a genuinely destabilizing, emotionally charged situation that they did not allow to derail them. Ohtani's return to this level of production carries its own separate significance. His 3-hit game in the series finale, following his 5 RBI performance in Game 2, marks a stretch of play that puts him back firmly among the game's most dangerous hitters. His batting average had climbed to .258 coming into this game, and the quality of contact he made across his at-bats here was consistent with a player who has his timing fully restored. Sasaki, on the other side of that equation, is making his own argument with each start. 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. Those are not numbers that come from a young pitcher who is still figuring things out. Those are numbers from a pitcher who is developing into a genuine ace-level contributor. The improvement in his command from earlier in the year is measurable, and the start represented the clearest version yet of what Sasaki can be at the major league level. The Nolan channel ejection and the conversation surrounding that play will continue beyond this game. The baseball operations side of the league will have to decide what, if anything, follows from a review of the play. Channel was removed from the game immediately, and the umpire's on-field ruling was definitive. What happens at the league level in the days that follow is a separate question, and one that the baseball world will be watching closely. What happened in that 4th inning at Dodger Stadium, or wherever this game was played, was a sequence that compressed an enormous amount of baseball drama into a very short stretch of time. A 2 RBI single in the biggest spot of the inning, a violent collision at first base, a player lying on the ground holding his shoulder and hip, dugouts emptying, an ejection, a standing ovation, and then the Dodgers scoring 5 runs in that same inning and never looking back. Ohtani finished with 3 hits, 2 RBIs, and a statement performance that came in the middle of one of the more chaotic games this rivalry has produced in recent memory. Sasaki finished with the best start of his career. The Dodgers finished with the sweep. And the question that has been circling the Angels organization throughout this series, how do you stop Shohei Ohtani, still has no real answer, because on this weekend they ran out of legal options to try.